This is even more radical than the stuff that came from Stephen Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau over the last 10 years. This is not a serious plan to protect our economy and break our dependence.
You know it's bad when even mainstream media starts to turn their backs on the Liberals. Here may be the real reason why Mark Carney actually wants to block Canadian pipelines. It's something I've shared many times, but it does appear that we have some evidence now to confirm that. And on that note, Danielle Smith has gone completely rogue. She even teased yesterday about partnering with Quebec in terms of getting Ottawa out of their way. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. We've got more stories for you today, talking about the tariffs, Mark Carney's horrendous, embarrassing, laughably bad campaign. Subscribe, like, comment your thoughts down below. Give us a follow on other platforms as well. And let's first get into the carbon tax, which was removed, officially, quote unquote, removed as of yesterday.
Not only has the way we live and work fundamentally shifted, right now we're being impacted by a higher cost of living. Sometimes people will try to separate the two, that we need to focus on one thing or the other, the rising cost of living or climate action. But those who believe that fail to see the fundamental truth, that taking climate action lowers our cost of living.
Where the heck is Maury when you need him?
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
I've said it before, and I will continue to say it until the day I die. If you have to explain why something makes sense to me, it's probably because it doesn't make any sense at all.
Effectively zeroing it has changed that politically.
It's a narrower path. And thanks, Benzie, for reminding me that we should never put out policy prior to an election unless we're being hounded by the press and told that we never put out policy when we're in opposition. So thank you for giving me both sides of the argument today, my friend. The reality is, and I have to say this because it's true, all that the Liberals have done, if they zeroed it out, they haven't actually gotten rid of the infrastructure around the implementation of carbon tax. And I would just say, Vashi, how much money was spent going to the Supreme Court on this matter by all the provinces, by the federal government, to get all the way to the top in order to show that the federal government could implement their own policies in a provincial jurisdiction. And they won. And those Supreme Court justices tied themselves in pretzels to get it done. They called it an existential threat, and that if one single province didn't do it, then the whole thing was going to fall in and of itself and Canada would burn to the ground. Hey, guess what, Supreme Court? Thanks, but no thanks. We'll catch you later. But we got the power to do it, but we weren't really meaning it was actually an existential threat. Maybe an existential threat to us being elected to a fourth term, but that's about it. So given the politics, we're going to take a pass on the carbon tax this time, and maybe we'll get you later. That would be, I think, the best argument that Conservatives could put forth right now.
I had posted about this yesterday, and there was a lady on X who responded to my post, and she commented something to the effect of, are you just going to keep complaining about this forever? Because isn't this just what you wanted? You wanted the carbon tax to be removed, and now it's removed. So it doesn't even matter if it's Carney or if it's the Conservatives who win, because the carbon tax is gone. It's a dead issue, or you're just going to complain forever. To which I said, yes, I will likely complain forever about this issue when it comes to the Liberal government, because I trust somebody who sticks to their word and who is honest and always stands their ground on something, as the Conservatives have. I do not trust, I think it is dishonest, disingenuous, any other word you can throw out there, when a party who was the architect, who is currently being run by the man, actually, who quite literally was the architect behind carbon tax and carbon tax credits, or carbon credits, sorry. When they say they've made their entire platform about this thing, and then when it comes to an election and what's going to win them votes, then they suddenly, oh yeah, we're going to get rid of it too, everybody. Just like Jagmeet Singh did a few days ago. No, I actually will continue to complain about people who are lying, people who are manipulating and gaslighting and trying to make it a dead issue, non-issue, so that they can eventually bring it back.
Mark Carney is trying to tell people he canceled the carbon tax. He did not. He set the rate at zero. And that's great news for a temporary relief, but here's why it matters. He could have repealed the carbon tax. He could have recalled Parliament if he was serious. He could be saying it's the first thing I'm going to do. That's not what he's saying. He's saying the carbon tax is a divisive policy right now. And that matters because he did not repeal the legislation. So he set the rate at 0. That means he can increase the rate whenever he wants if he wins the election. And again, it wouldn't matter if he hadn't spent the last 10 years evangelizing about the importance of a price on carbon and the importance of, this is from his book, keeping 80% of Canadian energy and Canadian gas in the ground. And so today he's saying that let's not talk about this today, it's divisive, but I don't trust for a minute that he won't bring it back when he thinks it's politically expedient to. And you look at things like he kept Steve Guilbeault in his cabinet. This is also somebody who has staked his personal reputation on the carbon tax as a tool to fight climate change. So I don't believe what Mark Carney is selling to the Canadian public right now.
And again, I will say, for Canadians, I actually don't even really care. Like, if you are somebody where when it comes to your ideology, you align with liberalism more than conservatism, that's great. But we should all be able to objectively come to the same conclusion that they have been doing a horrendous job. And conservatives are actually not really the bad guys if you want to factor in even the last 32 years alone. Everybody says, oh, conservatives are the problem. Conservatives were in government for 9 years out of the last 32. Who is really the problem? And do you not think that perhaps the establishment that is the Liberal Party in Canada is just really, really good at spreading their message and making you afraid because they are in control of everything?
In fact, he wants to put the Liberal policies on steroids. His housing plan, I don't know if you saw this earlier this week, he wants to create a government-run construction company that is going to make prefab tiny homes with no parking spots. This is his idea for housing. This is even more radical than the stuff that came from Stephen Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau over the last 10 years. This is not a serious plan to protect our economy and break our dependence.
We're going to touch a little bit on this housing plan that was announced recently before jumping into some of the latest stuff with oil and Danielle Smith absolutely eviscerating and going totally rogue on the government. But first and foremost, somebody else had pointed this out to me, and I've seen it trending online since. It is very notable, though, because words really, really matter. And people are very careful about their words, especially high-profile people such as the Liberal establishment elites, such as Mark Carney. They are very careful about the things that they say. And if you pay attention to it, there's a lot of information you can take out of there. And one thing that a lot of people are pointing to is the fact that in their housing plan, they did not mention home ownership anywhere, which makes perfect sense given the fact that they want to build essentially government-funded modular homes.
You've got a future. We're going to build a future. We're building a future for you guys right here. Oh my God, this is why I'm in this, actually, right there.
He just really gives the ick. And if that wasn't bad enough, well, his policies certainly are. And his lack of accountability and self-awareness is really just the cherry on top. Listen to what he said yesterday when he was in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
New Liberal government will make your life more affordable. And that starts with fixing what's not working. Now, I'm not a career politician. I'm a pragmatist. So when I see something that doesn't make sense, something that doesn't work, I change it.
You see, here's the problem, though, is that the thing that doesn't make sense and doesn't work is you and your party. And you lied to Canadians saying that you were going to change it, and then you just hired all of them back. So you can say that all you want, but again, where's Maury when you need him?
It feels like taxpayers end up paying for everybody's pollution, and it puts it all on the government in some form rather than a user pay model.
Well, and government is us, right?
Yeah.
So government's not going to end up paying for things. We will all pay for things. And the question is whether we will pay for it a lot or a little, or whether we'll pay for it visibly or invisibly. One other thing about the industrial carbon price is that it does currently apply to the oil and gas sector.
Right.
So the logic of having an emissions cap layered on top of carbon pricing for the oil and gas sector, I think strikes most economists as a bit crazy.
It is so unbelievably shocking to me, though. I mean, the fact that legacy media is still touting Mark Carney in any way that they possibly can, when they can, as being this amazing hero savior because what? Because he passed inflation rates? Really? And they'll go and slam, oh, well, Pierre Poilievre is a career politician. I would far rather have a career politician than a career central banker.
So what is his plan? A resume is not a plan. Nor is continuing with the same policies that got us into this mess in the first place.
I'm pretty sure Mark Carney's only plan is to distract you from this while you don't pay attention to this. Case in point being this CTV News article. It says more Brookfield business entities registered to Bermuda building that houses bike shop. Now, given the fact that Mark Carney is like such a big talker when it comes to climate change and equity and the economy, it does seem kind of weird that there's a $25 billion green fund and multiple Brookfield entities that are linked to a very sketchy Bermuda address that shares it with a bike shop. That certainly does seem as though this is, kind of by playbook, a very common tactic in offshore finance. And the reason why they do this is to obscure ownership and operations. And it just it's a little bit of a protection, but it's kind of obvious, even though this is an allegation and we don't actually know, and I am just speculating. Then there was another article that came out that shows that Brookfield Asset Management is reportedly finalizing a deal to acquire Colonial Pipeline, which is the largest United States fuel transportation system for over $9 billion, including debt. Now, this is also rather odd when you consider Canadian energy policies. The fact that just yesterday, Mark Carney said he refuses to remove Bill C-69. And he has also said that he doesn't really plan on actually making new pipelines, apparently. We're going to get into Danielle Smith about that.
Our latest CTV polling by Nano says fewer than 25% of people on the prairies are against using oil and gas and other energy items to fight back against Donald Trump's tariffs. So why do you say that if Canada decided to use our resources to strike back at America, it would spark a unity crisis when it appears that the majority of Canadians would support such action?
Well, I think it's a garbage poll, frankly, and you can let your bosses know that, because what if we were to ask Albertans or Canadians this? Would you support export tariffs if it meant the U.S. would retaliate by shutting off Line 5 and leaving Ontario and Quebec without gasoline or aviation fuel at all? I think you'd get a different answer. I think people need to look at a map, see where Eastern Canada gets its oil and gas from, and realize that it's a very, very dangerous game to be talking about tariffing energy and to talk about turning the taps off. I think we saw that when it was attempted with electricity. The result was immediate. The Americans came forward with a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, and it had to be walked back. So I don't even want to play with that fire on a cross-border trade worth $150 billion.
So it's kind of interesting that Mark Carney has been very much in favor of Canada's energy sector being completely squashed and very much in favor of energy things that Brookfield Asset Management is invested in, and there's several of them, being able to thrive. Again, I am just going to speculate about the inconsistency here about the economic implications for our country, which he claims to love, as well as the environmental impact of that, which he claims to be against, and that is why he has rejected it at every possible turn here in Canada. But I am about to tell you something that makes an awful lot of sense. We just have to listen to a little bit more Danielle Smith first.
We want to see an end to emissions caps. We want to see an end to net zero power regs, net zero vehicles, net zero building codes. We want to make sure that we control our own environment for methane emissions. We want to make sure that we don't have a ban on tanker traffic off the West Coast, that we have control over our process to approve pipelines with an end to Bill C-69 and a couple of other things. Those are things I'm advocating for, and I will continue advocating for them after the election. I will give whoever happens to be in the chair 6 months to make good on trying to address some of those critical problems for Alberta. And then at the same time, I'll be going across Alberta on what I'm calling our What's Next panel to see what kind of feedback we get. But we can't stop trying to get the right policies in place. As I mentioned, we have a prime minister right now who says one thing in English, one thing in French, one thing in Eastern Canada, one thing in Western Canada, one thing to me, and then one thing to when he's asked by the media. So I don't actually know what this prime minister is going to do. I'm not encouraged by that flip-flopping so far. If you want to get corridors established, if you want to open up markets, you have to get rid of all of the policies that are dampening investment in our country. And you can't have it both ways. So,
and here is where it starts to make sense. There's this little thing called neoliberalism that actually really dominated globally in about the 1970s, and then it kind of crashed and burned by roughly the 1980s. But there's a lot of remnants of neoliberalism that are still alive and well today. Mark Carney apparently is really involved in all of that, which obviously he is, because he is involved in some of the most elite of elite circles. He is a globalist. He is a central banker. And shocker, by the way, central banking is a key player, a major role player in neoliberalism. So it might seem really weird to you that Mark Carney claims to be super green. He's all about the green agenda. He wrote a book called Values that was all about that stuff, which is honestly so dystopian if you have the displeasure of reading it. And at the same time, he is backing pipelines that are not invested in Canada, which would be a competitor to those investments, and also hiding funds offshore, allegedly. And that, my dear, is peak neoliberalism in action. And here's the thing about neoliberalism is that it is not just about free markets, the way that they pitch it, where it sounds like it's going to be really successful. It is actually about a system that pretends to serve the public good, but it actually, once implemented, as we saw in the 1970s to 80s, it only serves elite financial interests. And so Mark Carney talking about things like having ESG funds, green bonds, carbon credits. He literally was talking about carbon credits last week. All of those things are not at all about reducing emissions. It is all about creating a new financial product that allows investors to profit off of climate change without actually reducing pollution. Think about how much money the federal government made after they installed the carbon tax, as an example. They said, oh, it's going to be so great for the environment. Nothing changed. Go look at the data. Nothing changed during the period of time that happened. But what did happen is from the remaining percentage that was not redistributed back to Canadians, the government kept that money. They made billions of dollars off of that tax. Neoliberalism involves a lot of deregulation for the elites and a lot of regulation for absolutely everybody else, hence the pipeline situation here in Canada. Mark Carney has been working behind the scenes with all of the other neoliberals in the Liberal Party to ensure that this happens, that Canadian domestic pipelines and things like that are absolutely buried underneath all kinds of bureaucracy, red tape, climate action, blah, blah, blah. It is impossible to get anything done in this country, and we have seen that hurt our economy so badly, while their investments are in other countries that do not have the same regulations because they are not run by neoliberals. So Mark Carney in particular is pushing for this ideological agenda, which of course is all under the guise of climate responsibility, while also benefiting from the very system that he criticizes and from his ability and influence and power to make you feel ashamed and to also influence policies. And here's the thing, though, is Mark Carney may have stepped aside from Brookfield Asset Management, but his position is still there for him when he's done being prime minister. So you have a man who has benefited from policies, from the things that his organization says is an existential threat, a big crisis, who is now the lead policymaker in some regard, or trying to be if he wins this federal election. This is not a man who is doing things in the country's benefit, because if he was, he would have immediately repealed so many of those energy and economy job-killing things that were put in place while he was advising the Trudeau government, that were put in place to benefit what his actual goal is, which is to get richer, allegedly. And so it's not a shock at all that the entire time leading up to Mark Carney being installed And also throughout the entire Liberal leadership race and throughout Mark Carney's entire campaign, the only thing anybody is talking about is Donald Trump. He wants to use that as an excuse, as a reason for you to not look into all of these other things. But joke's on him, because I'm pretty sure Donald Trump just screwed his entire election pitch, because it turns out that as of today, even though Mark Carney and the Liberals have spent the last number of months making you scared of Donald Trump, turns out that Canada is exempt from today's reciprocal tariffs, though non-compliant CUSMA goods will see a 25% tariff, and non-compliant CUSMA energy and potash will see a 10% tariff, and the auto tariff, which we already knew was coming at 25%, kicks in tomorrow.
I will propose to the President to accelerate renegotiations of CUSMA, bringing in a new deal on trade and security. CUSMA must be renegotiated anyway, next year. Why wait? Why not get it done now? Why not end the uncertainty that is paralyzing both sides of the border and that is also costing us jobs today? We should set a firm date to finalize a new deal. And I will propose that both countries pause tariffs while we hammer out that deal. Keeping destructive tariffs in place kills jobs on both sides of the border and so serves no purpose at all. It does not make sense to go on killing jobs, disrupting markets, and weakening both our economies with on-again, off-again tariffs for months on end as Canadian businesses and workers live in paralyzed terror. In the meantime, during negotiations, suspension of tariffs would have to go both ways. Either they take them off or we would not. We would require this to be fully reciprocal as we work towards getting a deal.
And I wonder what Mark Carney will do now to try to win this election. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. There are so many other things I wanted to talk about today, and then I got a little carried away with neoliberalism there. Sorry, not sorry. Be sure to subscribe, like the video, comment your thoughts down below, and give us a follow on social media, other platforms on social media as well. And I will talk to you tomorrow.